In this moment, I trust more in my own connection with the female victim than in God's word. I don't need the Bible. I will find my own words. I don't need priests to hide behind.
Hi, Daniel.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so
Jana.
much. Thank you so much for your time. A pleasure to talk to you and to talk about Pray for the Devil. I really enjoy, and I thought it was really, I got scared some parts, and I'm really impressed with some of the performances, especially for Posy Taylor. Oh my God, that girl, where did you find her?
That is an interesting question because you always hear that, we saw hundreds and thousands of girls. In this case, we did. And you know that a studio is desperate and scared when they hire a second casting agent. And they hired one for the US and one for the UK, and they both went out and they came back after weeks and weeks and basically said, we can't find her. This girl doesn't exist in our files, you know. And then the UK casting director said the words, where you really know you're in trouble, I will now go into schools. So she went out into schools. And then in Bath, a city in England, a drama teacher suggested one of her students, which turned out to be not even Posy, but Posy's sister, who was on vacation or something. And Posy was like, I'll go in and I'll do it. And that's where Posy came from. And she has a talent that I don't know where it comes from, but she just does it. I worked with Millie Bobby Brown before she did Stranger Things, and she had exactly that same quality, that it's such an intelligence and such a beyond her years. You have no idea what they're connecting with. They don't know, but it's just coming out as the most beautiful gift you could ask for as a filmmaker.
Yes, and her chemistry with Jacqueline, it's amazing, like the way that they connect. And Jacqueline is also perfect. I love her, like you picked the right person to play Sister Anne. But what was like the difficult, your challenges, especially in those scenes that both of them are kind of crazy. I don't want to give away too much, but kind of crazy. What was like your biggest challenge on those scenes?
I mean, on a technical side, a big challenge was that we were the first project to go out during COVID, the very first project. There was no vaccines yet, no nothing. So they didn't know how to handle that. So there were all these rules in place that we had to wash. The entire 100 people on the team had to wash their hands every hour. That's already half an hour gone out of your hour, you know. Then lunch had to be a certain way. You lose another hour. In the end, we had, instead of normally you have 12 to 16 hours of a shooting day, we had 10 hours, which sounds like a lot, but it really cuts your day, cuts a third out of your day. So you can only do a third of that. And then with a child, there are specific rules that apply. You can only shoot for 6 hours a day with a child, and they need to break for doing homework. And then the 6 hours include the hours in the makeup chair, which if we had done her effects practically would have been 4.5 hours. So there would not have been any time to actually shoot any of the stuff. So that was definitely something to deal with. And then, of course, there is how do you work with a child? And luckily, Jackie is the best actress in the world and the best person in the world. And she did two things. She was such a great actress that she did not require any attention on set. Like everything we did together, we had talked about in such depth that I could totally focus on Posy. But then even Posy pulled her stuff out of somewhere that I had nothing to do with, you know. And that then really worked. And what they did, what you're picking up on, is that they met Posy and Jackie every afternoon or every evening after our shooting. They met for tea because they were staying in the same, you know. And that is half of the chemistry that you can't create on set. You know, by the time that you have created that energy on set, the shoot is over. So for them to have done that through Zoom board game nights before the lead up of the shoot and all that, a lot of work was done there. And it was just the cast that really loved each other. And that is all down to Jackie, because the lead of a film always sets the tone, you know. And Jackie's talent is so limitless that she is never difficult because she's never scared that there's something she can't deliver. You could ask her for anything, she'd be able to give it to you. So she is so relaxed and so supportive of everybody else that she could just become this mother figure and the sister figure on set. And that's something that I can never thank her for enough.
Yeah. Now let's talk a little bit about the cinematography. It's beautiful, by the way. How did you decide to, like, you can see like there's different when you have Sister Anne that with Natalie together on the scenes, and with when she's with the fathers. Can you talk a little bit about it?
I always have the feeling you want to try to pull all colors out of your image and then reintroduce the colors that are meaningful. Like if I have a whole room where there is no color and then I put one red apple on the table, suddenly it's exploding into your face. And obviously that world of the priests and the church is made for that stuff. So we could say, okay, this is an eternal battle between light and dark, good and evil. So let's express that in shades. Like it's no coincidence that her nun habit, which is usually black, is gray in this case, you know, and that later in the third act, Sister Anne is wearing a priest's outfit that is black with white. There's so much nuance you can play with. And then the cinematography, of course, supports that. We were very lucky that we were shooting at the University of Sofia in Bulgaria, which because of socialism hadn't been worked on for decades. So everywhere where you point at the camera, you have that old feel, the lived in kind of feel, you know, and texture everywhere. It's not something you had to create. And that's, of course, a joy for any cinematographer to kind of support with shadows and to always change. For example, this feeling of you're not alone in the room. Yes, it's Sister Anne and it's Posy talking, but really there's a shadow somewhere where you have the feeling visually, subconsciously, the audience wouldn't even be able to say how there are three people in the room. There's another entity in the room that shouldn't be there. You know, so that's really fun to play with.
It's amazing. And how much was like practical effects and how much was CGI, if you can disclose that?
I can't disclose that. A lot of stuff is always you start practically and then you clean up digitally, you know? So, but for example, the makeup effects on our girl in the third act are all digital, if you can believe it. I would never have believed that that is possible technically.
Me neither.
Right? I just saw it on a huge screen in Toronto the day before yesterday, and I was like, oh my God, is this gonna hold up? And it was amazing. I have to call that company and tell them what a great job they did. That it's all digital because I couldn't have done it practically in the time that we had with COVID, with the child restrictions, with all that stuff. And then a lot of things are always like, okay, someone is on steel wires and is being pulled up the wall so that she can scuttle up the wall, but then you have to remove the wires and maybe speed up the shot and stuff like that. So a lot of it is hand in hand. And then it really depends on how much time do you have on set. Like I switched in this movie, we didn't have to do it, but whenever we have gunshots, of course, you start with the kind of Tarantino-esque, oh, it has to be practical, it has to be a squid, whatever. And then you do the squids and you lose 3.5 hours on set because you have to clean up the shirt and the set and the whatever, and it doesn't look right. And in the end, you go like, we'll fix it in post. And then you show it to your digital effects people and they go like, it'll be easier if we do it from scratch. And then you end up having paid for the visual effects on set. It didn't work. You lost time. You had less time with the actors. The scene didn't turn out as suspenseful as it could be just because the blood splatter that now looks so good in digital anyway, that it's really just an ego thing. So a lot of this stuff is really like, get your filmmaker ego out of the way and what can you do that gets the audience the most bang for your buck, the most effect? And that's kind of the balance you're trying to achieve.
Yes, and of course we have a lot of like movies, exorcism movies, some series. That's the questions, like how will Pray for the Devil stand out from other exorcism films?
I mean, I think the most obvious one is our protagonist being a female. And portrayed by Jackie Byers in a performance that you wouldn't believe. But what that does is that it opens up all these new sources of conflict. If you have a male protagonist, they just have to battle the demon. That's their job. That's what they're there to do. All the support goes towards that. Whereas with her stepping in there, it's the exact opposite. She has to fight the patriarchy. She's almost performing a blasphemic act in saying, guys, you've been doing this for millennia. You've been screaming the same Latin Bible verses at these demons. It doesn't work. They're still around. Why don't we make this not about us? You think you're these knights in shining armor battling the demon. Why don't we make this about the victim? Why don't we listen rather than scream our stuff, God's word, all that? And for her to say, in this moment, I trust more in my own connection with the female victim than in God's word. I don't need the Bible. I will find my own words. I don't need priests to hide behind. I will not even speak with the demon all the time. I will not let the demon distract me from what I am really here for, which is supporting the victim, freeing themselves, freeing their soul and their humanity from the affliction of the demon. That is such a profoundly revolutionary act in the church. That's more dangerous to the church than any demon and any devil. You know, they can deal with demons and devils. They've done that since the dawn of time. They're very comfortable with it. But for a woman to suddenly step forward and say, guys, it's time for a new age. It's the dawn of a new time here. They don't know what to do with that. So suddenly you have a story in which you have all these characters that have to find their position to that. There's Father Quinn, who on the one hand is representing the status quo and the structure, but on the other hand sees the talent of this woman and that the church is really cutting itself off from a wonderful weapon against the devil by employing this girl. So how does he deal with that conflict? There's just so much more depth to stuff. And that was important to us, that we're not just doing the strong female protagonist to get that label, because everybody it's a buzzword that, you know, and a feminist icon and whatever. And we kind of said, what does that mean? And we like the label, but how do we earn that label? How are we going to tell a story where we don't just replace the male protagonist with a female protagonist, but we tell a story where it's so woven into the DNA that you could not tell this story with a male protagonist. Everything changes because of the female protagonist. Her approach, her therapeutic approach suddenly changes everything. And then we basically went through and looked at all these set pieces that you kind of have to deliver. The audience buys a ticket for an exorcism movie. On the one hand, they want and you deserve to see the set pieces. On the other hand, they are getting ready the sentence, oh, it's just an Exorcist ripoff. You know, so what do you do? How do you handle that?
Yeah.
So our approach was like, let's deliver these set pieces, but let's try to find a spin that is fresh in every single one of them. So it reinterprets something for our mythology that people that have seen 20 exorcism movies recognize as new and fresh and challenging. But the 13-year-old, where it's the first exorcism movie they ever see, they see a full-on committed set piece, and not one that is ironically broken and wink, wink. You know, we're better than this. Fully lean into it, but give a fresh approach. If you take the example of contortions, we basically said, okay, we have to do contortions because it's an exorcism movie, so let's do them well. But also, what do they mean in our context? Let's say in our context, there are two pilots fighting for the steering wheel. It's the demon and the afflicted, the victim, and they're both fighting over control of the body. So our contortions should be an expression of that. So ideally, I would be able to stop Jackie mid-movement and say, freeze. What is your right hand doing right now? Is it the demon? Is it the victim? Is it half and half? What is it? So suddenly they were acting fight sequences, battle sequences in their own bodies. You know, so small adjustments like that.
That's amazing. Daniel, I just want to thank you so much for your time. A lot of success, and I hope everybody liked the movie like I did. I was like impressed with some parts, and I really enjoyed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jana.
Bye-bye. Nice to meet you.
Bye, you too.
If you like this video, don't forget to comment, to like, and subscribe to our channel right here.